Hey, Trump's indicted. It's kind of laughable, especially when the ignorance of the American people don't know what an indictment is. And even the word before it, it says presentment or an indictment. It says that in the Fifth Amendment. It's the first stage, and the indictment, the grand jury process, and the trial jury. It's amazing how many people don't know the difference between a grand jury and a trial jury. But that's what government wants you to not know, because they control the school system. And you think it was important enough to educate you, but they don't even teach that in school, because it's very significant to our founding concepts of law. The indictment process through the grand jury, or the presentment, which has the same power as indictment, but they don't even want to talk about that because that's very controversial, and God forbid we put that much power in the people. But the grand jury process is over 800 years old. It is codified in the Magna Carta, 1215 AD. King John was usurping the rights of his people, so the barons decided to, we had enough of this, we're going to have to do something, because he's really, just throwing people in the dungeon for no reason, killing them for no reason, just because they're not doing what the king said. So they held the king at knife point, and they basically made him sign the Magna Carta, one of the first charters of freedom to secure our rights. So in order to be charged with a crime, you had to have the peasants in the kingship, whatever I'm bad for terms here, but to decide if the person should be charged to go through trial. So it's the first process to protect your rights. So everyday people, citizens in the community, would then hear the case, investigate, and decide if you're initially charged. And the common law of England contained the grand jury. Common law is the founding concepts of law. It's common sense. So they would just simply use common sense. Say, is this an evil act or is it a good act? The problem here in America, you're told that laws written by public servants are laws when they're realistically not, because the Declaration of Independence says laws of nature. That kind of secures our common sense law, natural reason it's called. So natural reason can be used by the grand jury and the trial jury. But they don't want you to know that, because they want you to think that the politicians control you by telling you what the law is, by you electing them. It's a total sham. You're living in this matrix. You're being tricked and fooled by the system of fake law. And this is how they're ruining America, because you're too ignorant to understand the whole process, and too busy watching sports, which drinking beer, whatever it is. But so if you're charged with a crime, now you get a trial of 12 jurors, independent of the grand jury, and these are 12 more citizens that get to use common sense. What I love about the jury process is the best example of a republic, which isn't ruled by majority, which is a democracy. Ruled by a republic is ruled by law, ruled by all. So for example, in a trial jury, 12 jurors, all of them need to find you guilty. So if one person says not guilty, you go home, you're not guilty, the whole thing's over with. And the jurors are typically chosen because the jury of your peers. Now, peerage is the same status of royalty as you from Old English law. So if you're a king, you get king for jurors. If you're a peasant or subject, you get subjects for jurors. That's what that means, status of royalties, peerage. So you then get to pick your jury with the prosecution, you agree to it, and then you have your jury. So there's a good chance if you're really guilty, you are really guilty. So realistic, is Trump going to be really guilty? We don't know. We don't. But I do know there's something that goes on. It happens here right in our county, New York. It happens all over the country. The prosecuting attorneys brag, we can indict a ham sandwich, because the people are stupid sitting on the grand jury. They're ignorant of the law. And the prosecuting attorneys will sit there. Sometimes they'll bully the jury, and they'll make the jury feel like they're below them, when realistically, I found that in downstate New York, when the mob ran the prosecuting office, was the prosecuting attorney, was the judges, was the elected officials in Tammany Hall, downstate New York. So the whole downstate New York was controlled by criminals. Hey, like it was now, right? Like it is now. So the downstate New York in the 1910s, I forget, 1915, the grand jury fired its own prosecuting attorney. It's in a book called The People's Panel, written by Brown University Law School, by a famous guy that tried educating people about the grand jury, but nobody wanted to listen. But the grand jury in downstate New York fired their own prosecuting attorney, hired one they trusted, and they cleaned house. You're not told how they got the mob was eliminated in New York State, because they don't want you to know. They want you to think the FBI fixed it. How you like that? The FBI, who creates these wars and tries to manipulate our elections and everything else. The FBI is a criminal organization in itself. That's not what got rid of the mob. It was the grand jury process. But here in downstate New York, the prosecuting attorney took a biased grand jury who probably didn't have no clue about natural reason, natural law, common sense, and they said, whoa, yeah, this can be derided as a crime. And guess what? It could, because the grand jury can use natural reason. So regardless of what the law has to say, if the grand jury feels it was an evil act, they can indict. But it doesn't mean he's guilty. So my YouTube channel, I got a bunch of videos here where I show the grand jury law. There's a good write-up, Yale law review. It's called Reviving Federal Grand Jury Presentments. If you do a search on the web, you can actually find that. And one of my videos here actually show the grand jury manual, the Yale law, the studies, the documentation I pulled out from a UB law school locally. And just to prove the fact, you know, judges agree with you, attorneys agree with me. But they're kind of afraid to poke the bear, because if you don't get along with judges, you don't get fair treatment. And guess what? The judges were never allowed to judge. There's no law saying that a judge, a servant, public servant, is allowed to judge you. There's no law that says that. Yet you allow it to happen all the time? What do you think shit's so corrupt? Judges are all paid off. They're politically elected and chosen by the status quo to protect the criminal politicians. Right here in our county, the judges will not go after corrupt politicians because they put them in office. Same thing with prosecuting attorneys. You know, there's a video, I just interviewed one of the, Brian Seaman, our county district attorney. He asked him, what happened? They won't elect or won't charge a public official. That actually struck me. That's documented harassment, a criminal charge. Yet they won't charge because she's politically connected and knows people throughout the county, has a town supervisor, she's a town board member, and works for the Office of the Aging. How do you like that? But all politics is local. Every county in New York State and throughout the whole country has grand juries. And they have the power to use common sense, natural reason to stop abuse, but the government's laughing at you. They look at you as like what a bunch of ignorant little puppets. We're going to keep on controlling these ignorant citizens because they don't have a clue, and we're going to keep on using them. It's mind-blowing, but hey, you get what you deserve, right? You deserve this ignorance. You deserve the high taxes, the control, the licensing, the fees, the controlling of your Second Amendment rights, everything. You are a slave to the system because they need your money to take care of their benefits and their friends and their family, and they need to create war because that pays for the war machines, which funds their campaigns too, and kills upwards of millions of people because it's your fault to not understanding the basic principle of what our founding fathers put in place. But thanks for listening. Reach out to me anytime if you got any questions. Here at my YouTube channel. Pulling into work.